If you really focus on these things, it is very likely that in the long term, any pain and discomfort in this area will simply not happen. Welcome, I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you want to learn more about sexual and self-mastery, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified when I release new videos and go live. If you're new, make sure you start with my free ejaculation control course through the link in the video description below. In this video, I'm going to talk about a possible link between practicing semen retention and experiencing prostate pain, discomfort, prostatitis type symptoms, possible connections here, and what you can do about this most importantly. So I've had many men reach out to me and share various discomforts and pains they've had in their bodies practicing semen retention. And first of all, I should say here that nothing I say in this video qualifies as medical advice. You should only implement anything at your doctor's approval. So I've had men report things such as burning sensations while urinating, prostatitis type symptoms, pain in the prostate region, painful ejaculations, painful sex. And personally, I've been practicing semen retention for 9 years now. And no, that doesn't mean I have not ejaculated in 9 years. I do ejaculate intermittently. So I've had quite a lot of experience, and I personally have experienced some of these things. And I just want to share a bit of my own insight, the discoveries I've made, and hopefully share a bit of understanding that you can avoid any potential discomfort or negative side effects of semen retention. So first of all, it's important to understand that when you practice semen retention, you're building up a tremendous amount of pressure in the body. Most men naturally would ejaculate at least every few days or something like that, right? As soon as they have the urge, that sexual energy builds up, that arousal builds up, they have an urge to ejaculate. That's kind of the, we could say, typical male cycle. And when you practice semen retention, you're withholding from that ejaculation while often still experiencing arousal. And for men practicing the sexual kung fu practices, still having sex maybe every day, even having orgasms without ejaculating. And this does have the potential to build up a tremendous amount of pressure in the pelvic region. And here's the whole problem that men run into is, first of all, they're not properly prepared to practice semen retention. I don't believe that semen retention is a complete beginner's practice in that it's not 100% harmless. There are side effects that can happen. The most common side effect is exactly what I'm talking about. This energy, this arousal, this nervous system electricity builds up in the genital regions and it gets stuck there. So you have all this information, all this, what becomes congestion and tension in the pelvic region. And on a physical level, this manifests as pressure, constant engagement in the pelvic floor muscles, like holding a Kegel all day, hypertension. And this creates all this pressure and constriction in everything that's down there. The prostate, the bladder, everything becomes constricted and it causes pain and discomfort at some level. And there is often a correlation between how long you go and the likelihood of experiencing this, because typically what happens is men who are having non-ejaculatory sex, or maybe they're just becoming aroused, each time you do that, you're building up more of a sexual charge, more of an aroused energy, and it's building and building in the pelvic floor. And if you're not successfully doing the practices to remove that energy, to circulate it upwards in the body, releasing the tension from the pelvic floor and bringing it somewhere else that's a bit safer to store, like the dantian. If you're not doing that, then again, over time, it just builds and builds and builds pressure, and it's going to lead to discomfort at some point, most likely. So for most men, I do not think semen retention is the first starting point with the sexual practice. Sexual kung fu is a system. It's a holistic system of training systematically. And a lot of men get overly obsessed with just this aspect of retaining their semen because they want all this power, they want all these, supposed benefits from it. But what they don't realize is they're not prepared to handle that higher voltage of energy. If you don't increase your energetic output, if you don't have a safe electrical system, so to speak, in your body to contain that heightened energy, meaning that if your energy channels are not properly opened, you don't know how to circulate it, your sexual center is disconnected from the rest of your body, it's a recipe for disaster. And the most common manifestation of this stagnant energy is feeling extremely irritated, feeling stuck, a lack of creativity, and obviously feeling literally tension and pain in the genital region. So that's why sexual kung fu is trained in steps, in stages. First, you learn to clear excessive energy from the body. Then you learn to open up the energy channels of your body. Then you learn to ground your energy. And then you learn how to circulate this sexual energy, because all the steps are there. But most men, they don't go through this training. They just try to go straight to building up massive amounts of sexual energy, and their body simply is not prepared for it. They don't know how to release the tension that this excess amount of sexual energy creates in the body, and at some point it just becomes a disaster. So the remedy to this buildup of energy in the genitals, which often becomes stagnant, produces pain, produces discomfort, feelings of irritability is to, first of all, circulate that energy. This is why the Microcosmic Orbit practice is the #1 foundation for practicing sexual Kung Fu. I have several guided videos on the Microcosmic Orbit practice. That's something you want to be doing regularly. And when you get good at it, you will be able to draw your sexual energy out of the genitals consistently in a practice called testicle breathing, which I've also made a video of. And that is the main method that you use on a day-to-day basis to keep your sexual energy flowing, transforming, moving into other forms of energy in your body so it does not get stuck in the sexual region. But I think that the most common cause of a lot of these prostatitis type symptoms, the pelvic pain, is pelvic floor hypertension, which most men have. And I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but it's very important mentioning here because I believe there is a strong correlation to this and a lot of the physical discomfort that men are experiencing when practicing semen retention. So for most men, when they're aroused, when they're having sex, when their penis is being stimulated, even when they simply have an erection, there's often a response of contracting the pelvic floor muscles. And there's various reasons for this. It can be a stress response, a lot of stress and tension in the mind and body, often due to poor masturbation habits or doing too many Kegels, but this creates this hypertension pattern in the pelvic floor. And for most men practicing semen retention, the longer they go without ejaculating, the more that this tension builds up. Because one positive thing about an ejaculation is that it releases this tension in the pelvic floor area. An ejaculation is a big release and it can be a release of tension, but you don't want to do that too much, obviously. So the whole thing here is how do we prevent this tension from building up and how do we release it if it is built up without ejaculating? And that's where the pelvic floor releasing work comes in. Because again, for most men, the longer they go without ejaculating, the more this tension builds up, the tighter the pelvic floor becomes. There can even be a buildup of fluid in the prostate, which creates a further swelling. So there's all this congestion in this area, which again places pressure on the bladder and on the urethra. It can make urinating painful. It can make orgasms, sex, and ejaculations very painful. I've experienced this personally, and I thought I had prostate issues or something like that, but it turned out had nothing to do with my prostate. It was perfectly healthy. It was because of I was doing all this Kegling. I had all this tension in my pelvic floor, and it was causing me a lot of pain. And so this led me down a whole rabbit hole of how do I release this pelvic floor tension? Because most teachers are only saying do Kegels. And a lot of doctors and things like that too are saying just do Kegels for men. And this just makes the issue worse and worse over time. So I learned how to release pelvic floor tension from my body. For me, the most helpful things were doing reverse Kegels and a pelvic floor stretching practice, which I've shared in a video called my top 4 exercises for tight pelvic floor. When incorporating these every day, it started to release this tension in my pelvic floor. I quickly became amazed at how much tension I was holding there as I was starting to feel into this area. And I had no idea before. And so it became very clear to me by doing these practices how much tension was there. And after, it took me several months to fully release it, but once I did, I noticed a night and day difference, not just in how my pelvic floor felt. I was no longer having discomfort in my pelvic region, my prostate area, no longer experiencing occasional painful urination, which was happening to me. So definitely check out that video, follow that routine if you're experiencing this. Something else that's extremely helpful is prostate massage. And I know this makes a lot of guys uncomfortable to think about, definitely to do, but it really is a use it or lose it situation. There's nothing inherently wrong about giving yourself a prostate massage. We've just been conditioned to believe that it's going to turn us gay or something like that, right? But it's definitely not the case. And I think that this unconsciousness around this area, this shame and this guilt that a lot of men feel around this area of their body, this homophobia, it contributes to this tension in this area. So when you're able to go in and you can actually directly release the tissues from within. And for a lot of men, that's actually the most effective way to release the hypertension. It also helps to clear up congestion from the prostate and the seminal vesicles down there. And overall, it's good for your health because 50% of men have prostate issues at some point. Another important thing I recommend is to squat when you poop. This is how humans were meant to squat. And something that's interesting is that in a lot of Asian countries, it's pretty much unheard of to have prostate issues, prostate cancer, and things like that. In a lot of these Asian countries, they use the toilet in a squatting position. They poop in a squat. And because in our modern world, we spend a lot of time sitting down, sedentary lifestyles, our bodies often lack flexibility, things get stagnant and bound up down there. So being able to do a squat really opens up the pelvic floor region. Squatting when you poop helps get a full release and release stagnance in this area. So just to sum things up, pain and discomfort in your pelvic floor region isn't necessarily because semen retention itself is bad for your prostate or something like that, but it's simply because a lot of men doing semen retention accumulate large amounts of tension and energy and information which isn't really being circulated, and this causes a problem over time. So the remedy is to either, ejaculate it out, which again, you don't want to do too often. I do recommend that men do allow themselves to ejaculate on occasion. You will find a healthy cycle for your body based on your health and other factors. You can experiment with that. It's going to be about once or twice a month for most men. Less than that if you're really good at alchemizing the sexual energy through the sexual kung fu practices. So it really comes down to this tension buildup and being able to release it through internal energy circulation. So practicing microcosmic orbit and the testicle breathing practice every day, and doing the pelvic floor work to release those tension patterns, the reverse Kegels, the stretching routine, internal massage. If you really focus on these things, it is very likely that in the long term, any pain and discomfort in this area will simply not happen. That's been my experience with it. One last thing here, if you're having non-ejaculatory sex, it's very important that you circulate that energy instead of just letting it build up and build up. If you're right on the edge of ejaculating the whole time that you're having sex or self-pleasuring, then I guarantee it's going to cause a lot of tension and eventually some pain in that area. So getting good at having sex, having your penis stimulated without contracting the pelvic floor and keeping that energy flowing is going to make non-ejaculatory sex much more sustainable in the long term. And if you're realizing maybe you weren't fully prepared to practice semen retention in a sustainable way that's not going to cause harm to your mind or body, check out my in-depth course, Multi-Orgasmic Man, for complete training in how to open up your body to handle this heightened energy, how to clear excessive heat, excessive energy from the body, and how to channel your sexual energy into higher creativity, learn to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, and last for hours in bed. Find more information in the description of this video. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments below what was your biggest takeaway. Have a good day, my friends.